I used to measure progress on DDM in pixels and tiles. Now I measure it in systems, all working together as a whole. And I am so excited to show you one of those new systems, which we'll look at shortly. It changes the feel of the game completely. In the last DDM tools video, we took a look at the tools that I used before getting into the code. So we looked at CBM Program Studio, Draw.io, a little bit of Excel, things like that, where we're preparing sprites and screens and character sets and all that good stuff. So in this part, we're going to look a little bit more at the environments I'm using to write code and the new features and systems I've been adding. And almost everything I use is a modern tool. Like this is Visual Studio Code, which is using a Kick Assembler add-on by Paul Hawker, which works very well. And by doing it this way, I have the advantages of simply being able to press a key and it's going to compile and run the game. Now the game's running. It's now loading the files using Jiffy DOS. And we have it running and we can start a game. So literally my iteration cycle is that fast. In fact, I can even go faster, tell it to compile and hit warp here, and it goes super fast because it's not just Jiffy DOS, it's going as fast as the PC can go. So that works great. This is, it's so hard to explain how much more efficient this is than doing it back in the day. And another thing that I've done here recently is I've added code segmentation in Visual Studio Code, but this is really a Kick Assembler feature and it's amazing. So by doing it this way, everywhere in my code, I can go in here at the beginning and tell them, okay, this is going to go in the item code segment and it's going to label it item manager so I can see for each thing how much memory it's taking. The advantage of that is then down here, I can say, okay, the PRG file for the game right now will include these segments. And it's going to output DDM 1025. I change this each month, so I have a running list of outputs. So this is creating a PRG file that shows up and can be loaded. Then it has a disk definition. This is literally the directory of the disk. It's going to show up on the Commodore 64. And it's going to take and it's going to put ddm.prg that has everything in those segments. But then the character set, the sprites, the screens, and something else, those get loaded either from a segment, like the raw screens are still a segment because I need some information that's in that file, but it's dumped to disk as a raw file that can be loaded at runtime. And then others, like the sprites, come in as a binary. Character set comes in as a binary, gets loaded at runtime, and that just opens up a lot of things and frees up a ton of memory. I've been working a lot lately. The whole character screen edition has been added. So now, as I may or may not have shown before, if I run the game, start a new game, go to the character screen, now we have the player characters. We can change the order that they're in. So we can go through and look at the different characters, and most of them don't have items on them. Or we can say, well, I don't want my paladin at the bottom. Let's bring her up to the top. And also this ranger needs to come up here. So we can change our order. We can see our gear. And in this case, these just don't have gear in their data yet. This is something I'm working on right now. And what we're doing here is the leather helm, the healing neck, the garnet ring, the steel longsword, the large shield, all of this text is being stored as abbreviated text, which I believe looked at in the last video. So like if I look at leather here, it has the full word L-E-A-T-H-E-R, leather, but it has tags on certain letters that let it know to remove that letter if we need an abbreviated word. And abbreviated words have to be 5 characters or less. And then it also has a tag at the end to let the game know that, hey, that's the end of the word. So we're not wasting a byte for every word just to have a stop byte. We'll instead use a stop bit here. So I've been working a lot on that and have the data in there. And then as I've been working on that, I've been working more on the right character data. And by going through and taking a look, like, that's the party. I don't need the party, I need the player. So for the character screen, I've been working on improving its efficiency. And as you can see, I had a whole boatload of labels I was using to keep track of where to write different things on the screen. All of that's gone. It's commented out. My practice is generally when I make a major refactor, even though I know I can just revert in GitHub and go to a prior version. I like the visual effect of being able to see what I've replaced with what. I can see, for instance, I've created a macro that sets a cursor position on the screen in rows and columns. So this is going to be the second row down and the first column, and that replaces all of this code. And this basically, at this point, when it's compiling, it's going to take the 2 and 1 and it's going to put a little piece of code here that does the same job. It just works a little differently by calculating based off a row and a column instead of being just an address and RAM. And you can see throughout here how much code goes away with the addition of these macros. And then when I write the gear to the screen, I've even further created macros that literally I can say, okay, here's the position, row and column. It calculates which byte in the player data this is, because that's what the code needs. And then this macro fills that in. It uses a subroutine to minimize the amount. But as you can see, this is way more readable than all of this. So a lot of this is happening. I know refactoring people don't understand, but starting with something relatively simple and straightforward and then improving it generally creates far better code than trying to make some complex monstrosity off the start. So I guess the benefits of what I've shown you, for instance, the text, I call this the lexicon. It makes the text a little funky looking in the code, but it makes it dramatically more efficient. And this is a role-playing game, so having a role-playing game have text is important. So I'm making it as efficient as I can because that's simply going to give me as much space for text as possible. And then the disks that we looked at, this disk directive, this makes it really easy for me to see how things are working on native hardware. I can literally go onto my PC disk and pull ddm-dev.d64, and I can load that on a SD card, throw it in my SD to IEC, plug it into the Commodore 128D, and mount it as a disk. The 128D can't tell it from a floppy. In fact, sometimes I will copy that D64 onto a native floppy and literally run the game from floppy, which we saw in the last episode. Now, one of the things I talked about in the last episode, and I showed you guys an inventory screen. So, funny thing. So I started coding the new screen, and I didn't like some things about it. It occurred to me that if I go in here, and we looked at this, like I said last week, where we had the inventory screen, and we have like 2 banks of items and showing the stat, and then the players down below. So I've changed to this. So now it shows you 1 bank of items with the selected item stat here, and then the selected character, which this should be highlighted blue, but the selected character's stats show, or gear, sorry, the selected character's gear show here. And then I will reorganize the character screen we just looked at so that the gear shows up in the same place in order, even though it'll have like the headings and stuff over here and not have the same outlines. By putting this in the same spot, I can use the same code to display a character's gear. So that's where I'm at right now, working on more and more of the itemization. And then finally, lastly but not leastly, I'm going to take that line of code and I'm going to uncomment it. And now I'm going to compile and run. And there you have it. Music is in the game, and I'm so excited. So the music's being created by Jesse in SID Wizard, and I'm not even going to pretend to know how to use this program. I can bumble around to get the music out of it when I need to export it as SIDs for the game. But he did more in just like a week than I was able to do playing around with this thing for a month. So yeah, Jesse's doing an amazing job. That is the first try at a title theme. He's working on a couple other pieces for dungeons and cities. And yeah, it's so exciting. And the neat thing about it is, again, because of this disk system, all I have to do is drop the SID with the file name of ddmsid.c64 into the directory where all my code is, and this automatically picks it up and includes it on the disk image. That's all I have to do to change it. So yeah, lots of new milestones, from the text engine, the items, the lexicon database, the item database, new character screen with marching order, and adding in macros and music. The game's just coming along great. And more importantly, I've gotten to a stage where I really see how all the pieces are going to go together. So now I'm spending a lot less time worrying about coding myself in a corner and figuring out exactly how I want to do everything. And I can just sit down and say, okay, I need this piece of code, let's write it. And so that's why the progress is speeded up so much. So one thing I recently found out is that there is been announced a new VCF Pacific Northwest will be back in Seattle starting this spring. So my intention in May is to be at that show and to have a table. I will show the game in the state it's in, and that's going to put pressure on me to have the state it's in as far as I can possibly get it before the show. So yeah, I hope to meet some of you there, and I'm really excited to have a new one within range where I can just drive to Seattle from Eugene. It's about a 5-hour drive, so it's not terrible. So, combat mechanics, inventory stat effects, additional music will be coming along, and the next update should be sometime in early next year. I try to do them quarterly. But in the meantime, if you go to Patreon for free, just join the channel for free. You don't have to sign up and pay money or anything. I do give updates pretty regularly. They go to patrons early, but then usually the following Monday or like a week or so later, they become fully public. And you can go there right now and look at all the various updates that I've done over the past. So yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to make though is that the use of modern tools, which certainly is not like exactly like the way I wrote it back in the day, it really enables me to even be able to do this. It takes so long doing it the old way, and this is such a wonderful, fast iteration cycle, and something that I'm used to from programming in Visual Studio, not code, but regular Visual Studio and C# over the years, that this really is just a fantastic way to be able to create something. If you want to try creating something, again, like I said last time, go take a look at CityXen's tutorials and play around. Try just using CBM Program Studio. It's a simple download the program, install it, and you can just start writing code right there. And yeah, as soon as I'm done releasing this video, I'm back to working on the Amiga 1000 one, which is coming along nicely. I'm actually ready to record all the narration for it. And then the second part of the evolution of the Commodore 64 is also mostly organized and ready to start shooting. If you haven't seen it, check out this video. This is the introduction to my new series, 64 Commodore. Thanks for coming, and I'll see you next time.